This is Charlie Parsons for Boxing Social. Take 2. Said the old SD card was full, but we're back rolling. Ben Davison in what must be a really special week of your career. You've got Mark Dickinson and Pat McCormack making their matchroom debut on a really, really big bill. Dillian White takes on Jermaine Franklin. Yeah, you must be buzzing.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I mean, unusual in the sense that usually these prospects would make their debut. You wouldn't really call it a promotional debut, but you know, the lads are making their matchroom debut. However, you know, they've had two fights. I think Mark's had 3 fights now. You know, it's time now for them to get into a mindset of they need to practice the things that they need to be practicing to take their careers and develop in the right way. So, especially for Pat, he hasn't even been back to the corner yet. So, I know it's great for the hype, blow people away and all the rest of it, but what I want to see is him going in there, working on a few things, gaining some experience, and that will stand him in good stead for us to be able to move him at the rate that we would like to move him at.
Well, we'll go into Pat first because, I mean, you don't even have to, well, obviously you've got to be a boxing fan, but you don't even have to follow just the pro ranks or just the amateur ranks to know the McCormack name. Sensational amateurs they both were. They both sort of turned over with you in your gym. Obviously, we'll wait to hear more on Luke and whether he'll be able to, you know, box. I think he's sort of speaking about getting all that resolved and stuff, but for Pat, I mean, we know how talented it is, and these are the sort of cards that can really give him the exposure he deserves.
Yeah, for sure, and the exposure that he wants. You know, he's spent a long time on the GB system and excited to make his pro debut and be on the big cards. And this is a great card and an opportunity for him, you know, and he's looking forward to it. But again, it's about his development and gaining experience, and that's vital for him, because I believe if he applies himself in the right way, he will be a unique fighter, something that you haven't seen come from the UK before, in a sense of style. So I'm looking forward to that, yeah.
Let's touch on Mark, because at the launch press conference, I think it was Katie Taylor week when the signings were announced, Eddie said that you were always on at him about Mark, but he'd never really seen it himself. He then saw it, took a real liking, and that's why he joins Pat on this bill. Yeah, I mean, just a word on Mark and what a talent he is.
Yeah, I mentioned him to Eddie at the start because I don't think Mark was the number 175 kilo lad at the time. I think the goal was for Mark to go to Paris. He was only 20 years old at the time, I think, on the squad. But I knew within 10 minutes of him coming to my gym, take away whatever he was at that time, I knew within 10 minutes from the coaching I gave him and how attentive he was, I knew straight away he's going to do something, that lad. Didn't need to know anything else, didn't need to watch him anymore. I knew with how keen he was, how curious he was, I knew that he would go on to do something. And I gave him a few things that I wanted him to do that week. I gave him a spar at the end of the week, and I knew, without having a conversation with him, I knew when he went home after them sessions, he was in the bedroom practicing those things. You know, I could tell it when he came in the next day. There was an improvement every single day. And I knew right away, and that was when I said to Eddie, look, got a lad here, and I think the progress that he made throughout, he made a bit of a statement in his first fight. You know, I gave him a couple of fights in between for him to work on some things, and again, this is an opportunity here for him. This lad boxed here, 75 kilo Olympic gold medalist last time out, the lad that Mark's boxing. I think this is an opportunity for Mark to go there and do a better job. Not to put pressure on him in that way, but I think you'll see Mark is younger than that, the Olympic gold medalist, but I think you'll see how much more seasoned and how much of a prospect Mark really is.
Moving on to sort of the world of boxing as a whole, next week Tyson Fury makes his ring return against FURY-CHISORA. The trilogy is still doing well ticket-wise, and Tottenham Hotspur Stadium had a lot of sort of a few doubters on the fight itself. Obviously, we know that he's made fairly easy work of Derek in the past. They've had a long time out, and obviously Derek will always be a top-ranked fighter with the resume that he's got. But just your thoughts on the fight, and how does Tyson Fury do in there next Saturday?
I think the issue come from the way it was sold. I think it was, oh, I can't get AJ, I can't get Usyk, I'm going to box Chisora. When in reality what it was Usyk's not available right now, Joshua's not available right now, or whatever happened in that situation. Whether he was available or whoever it was with the fight situation. But Usyk's not available in December. We're going to look to box in February, March. In the meantime, I'm going to tick over with Chisora. I think people would have took it a little bit.
That's an okay fight. You like to tick over?
Yeah, I think so. Who else is there at the minute? You know, you don't want any silly risks as well, just being realistic. You don't want any silly risks if you're looking to box Usyk in February, March as well. So, yeah, and in terms of how I think the fight will go, I think it depends on how Tyson approaches the fight. I think it'll be interesting to see if Tyson does look to use his legs and box, as people would say. Is he still able to do that? A little bit older, a little bit heavier. Been a while since he has boxed like that. And if he stands in as a fight with Chisora, I think it'll be entertaining for however long it lasts.
Ben, I want to ask you from a trainer's perspective, something that I've sort of discussed with my mates and maybe people that don't have the eyes on boxing that we do. Anthony Joshua, obviously he's had those 2 defeats against Usyk now. What a good idea for someone like him who's always been a big mentality monster, used to being in the big fights. I know it's hard to get himself up for non-world title fights, but do you not think it's perhaps a good idea to go and get 2 knockout wins? And I'm not saying, you know, they're guaranteed knockouts, but against opponents where you'd expect him to win, maybe have a tough couple of rounds, rather than going straight back in the deep end. You know, Dillian White fight, spoke about Tyson Fury fight, Wilder fight. What would you do as a trainer and I suppose from a management perspective as well with Anthony Joshua?
I don't know him, so it's hard for me to say what I think he should do. I think that depends on personality, character, what motivates him, how he's motivated, etc. I think that certainly you couldn't say there would be something wrong with that. I think it's a smart decision, especially if he's looking to make adjustments to his style, that you want an opportunity to develop those things under the lights. And it's rare for someone of that level to be able to have that luxury. And I think that is an opportunity that's, like I say, is rare. So I think it's something that he should capitalise on if he has that opportunity. I don't know what his training situation is, if he's going to work with some other guys, some new guys, or he wants to. I heard that he wants to pick a few different coaches' brains, and he's in a perfect situation to be able to have a fight or 2 of a lower risk. No fight is no risk, especially in the heavyweight division. For him to go ahead and work on a few things. So will it come with some criticism? Of course, but yeah, I don't make decisions for them, but like I say, for a fighter of that level to have an opportunity to be able to do that is very rare. So while the opportunity's there, I think it makes sense because he is still a developing fighter.
If he doesn't, and he does choose to go down the route of White and then potentially Wilder next year, is that necessarily a bad idea? The reason I ask that, because if he takes a loss in a few of those, you know, people, you know, the retirement question's always going to be thrown about. But if he loses to Wilder or White, perhaps, you know, it's almost like, where do you go from there?
The thing is this, that whenever you get in the ring, there's a risk, and that risk will still be there boxing someone of a lower caliber. Sometimes, I actually had this discussion with Coogan yesterday, that I've worked with fighters, when they're boxing a better caliber fighter and the expectation isn't so much on them, but on it being more of a competitive fight, they feel less pressure. When they're boxing someone that is supposed to be a walkover, they feel tremendous amounts of pressure, and that is very common. I see that very often. I've had a number of fighters that have been like that. Because the expectation's so high and everything's on them. It's a lot of pressure on their shoulders, whereas when you're in a fight that's supposed to be a competitive fight, it actually brings less pressure.
Ben, top man, thank you for speaking to me at Boxing Social, and all the best for the lads on Saturday.